Hey there, dirt riders. You're with Enduro Bandit on the tube, and today I'm going to be doing a 5-year in review of my Gio X31 250cc Chinese dirt bike. And that may come as a shocker to a lot of you, that a Chinese dirt bike has lasted 5 years of grueling abuse. But I'm quite happy with it, and it still is ripping. I mean, I can easily keep up to name brand bikes. So I bought this thing for $1,000 online from Gio, shipped to my door for $200 in the crate, assembled it, $1,200 with tax and shipping included. Amazing. So let's start at the handlebars. I'll work my way down to the front wheel and then work my way to the back of the bike. So first off, I've had some pretty nasty wipeouts with this bike. Probably nastier than on any other bike I've had. And that's saying a lot. The handlebars haven't bent at all. And that is quite amazing because, I mean, they must be made of steel. Because the aluminum handlebars would bend so easily. The grips, they were one of the first things I replaced with Pro Taper, pillow top, and they're almost completely worn out now, but I still am using them. So the original ones are hard plastic, and your hands will get very sore from riding with those. These ones, much better. The front brake, when you get the bike, it's insanely touchy, like very touchy. You can use it at slow speeds and like non-critical moments, but like if you're going downhill or high speed and stuff like that, you could end up going over the handlebars. I broke my wrist because of that, and part of that is because the front forks aren't able to absorb much of that either because they are short travel, and we'll get into that later. But anyway, now that I've broken them in, I'd say after about 3 years, they lost their touchiness and now they're about average feel. So now I'm happy with them. They just had to wear in to a certain degree. I haven't changed the front brake fluid at all. It looks quite clean on there, so I'm impressed. I've replaced the clutch cable twice. This is the third one. Because it kept fraying here because I wasn't doing the adjustment down by the clutch properly. I wasn't adjusting it enough. I was doing it up here, and over time it will loosen the actual clutch, so you have to tighten it up down there and up here, and so now it won't be fraying anymore because I had it way out and the wire was fraying, and yeah. So the kill switch working great, never had a problem. Electric start, I've had a few problems. I'm on my third battery, I think. The first battery didn't last long at all because it was cheap. It lasted like, I don't know, like 1 season. And then just from sitting it died. But also I had the alternator wire, the wire going from the battery to the alternator. It looked like it lit on fire until it burned in half, and then thankfully the bike didn't light on fire. It was just a small little one. Probably while I was trying to start the bike, fuse didn't do its job or something, and then it wouldn't start because of that, because the alternator couldn't charge the battery, and that killed the battery. So the electric start works really good. When you first get the bike, it has a ton of compression. Half the time you can barely kick the kickstart down, and the electric start can barely turn it over. But now the bike is acting like a normal dirt bike with average amount of compression. Not that it's lost power really, but it's easier to start now. It still does actually stop sometimes when you're kicking it. Like, that's a good sign, good compression. The bush guards I added, they're MSR bush guards. They look great on the bike. They're really tough. The inserts are reusable in case you need to change grips and stuff. I wouldn't recommend at Kirby's because the inserts are like one-time use. So MSR all the way. They're cheaper. They're probably tougher actually. So the forks on this bike are quite a downfall. They are not able to absorb much. I don't know what brand they are, but it's obviously, this bike has a 250 engine put in what would normally be like a 125 bike. So the shocks obviously aren't meant for heavy people. And if you're going downhill and you use that front touchy brake combined with the front shocks, it'll send you over the handlebars because they can't absorb it. You could blow the seals jumping. Try to go easy on them. Try to land on the back wheel. I wouldn't recommend jumping Chinese bikes to begin with, but I don't know, this thing's a blast to ride. The back shock is quite tough. It can take a lot of abuse, even though it doesn't have much travel either. We're moving down to the disc brake and calipers. I haven't had to change any of that. They're all good. This front rim, I did have to change it. I'll show you the original one, how warped it was, and dented the crap out of it. I rode with it about that warp for like a year. So, look at that. Look how warped that is. Like, it's like half an inch to an inch play if you spin the wheel while it's on the bike. It's got dents all over the place. It's like 4 dents on each side. But anyway, it never went flat or anything in the grip. That front rubber was actually very grippy, the stock stuff, and it lasted good, so I was very happy with it. But I was running a bit of a risk riding with that rim. So by the time I decided to buy a new rim, they didn't sell the one that's needed for the Gio X31. You gotta buy off eBay. I think the brand's called Blago or something. They ship from Australia. They're for Chinese bikes, pretty generic. But you have to get a couple of axle spacers machined, and then drill some holes in the down here in the axle holes at the bottom of the forks for a thicker axle, because it has a thicker axle, and so it'll be a bit off-center the wheel, but not enough for you to notice while riding. Like, it's about half an inch off to the side. And it doesn't matter, the disc brake fits right in there. We got the exhaust system, the muffler. I'm still on the original muffler. Most of the rivets have blown out and been replaced with like just metal screws holding it together. You can buy a replacement muffler off of eBay. Like I said, generic, cheap. They sound really great. This is one of the best sounding 4-stroke bikes I've ever ridden or heard. I'm not even gonna lie, but people think it sounds awesome. It sounds raspy, loud, and I've got a homemade baffle in there because it blew the other one out from compression. I just rolled a bunch of thin metal up in a ball, like flat, thin metal into a ball, and screwed it in with a metal screw so it stays in there. Acts kind of like a spark arrestor too. What do we got? The intake manifold. When I bought the bike, it was slightly cracked. I didn't notice. The bike still was starting up and running pretty good. As the more I rode, the bigger the crack got, and I didn't know it was cracked. I'm thinking it's the carburetor. I kept tuning the carb more and more gas on the air gas mixture screw until it was like it came right out while I was riding because it was so far out. The bike wanted so much gas, it wouldn't idle very good at low RPMs. You had to give it a bit of gas or it would stall. And I put about 20 hours on the bike with a cracked intake before I realized it was cracked all the way around. Very hard to notice because it was a very the crack was just like right in there. Like, you gotta look at it with a flashlight up close to notice. And so it was probably pulling in dust and debris. Plus I didn't have the air filter oiled all this time until this past year I started oiling it finally. So it was probably sucking in a bit of dust that way too. And I was going through mud and everything. There could have been water going in there. Like, the engine didn't have any power loss. In fact, with that high gas mixture coming into the engine, it just wanted more gas, more. That equals more power for top speed. Like, this thing was ripping, and I felt like it had a power increase. Honestly, it was backfiring like really loud going downhill. I love the sound of that, but it gets annoying after a while because it was like pretty crazy anyway. People thought this thing was like a race tuned engine, other than it not idling at low RPMs, that is how a lot of racy engines are. But anyway, finally I noticed I replaced that. I already had replaced the carburetor because I needed to replace that because of the fuel air mixture screw. I couldn't replace that, so I had to buy a whole new carburetor. And the carburetors for these babies are name brand Performance Mikuni carbs, and I'm very happy with them. So the bike's had no problem since I replaced that intake manifold, really, and I could still be running on the first spark plug probably if I wanted to, because this thing doesn't foul spark plugs, doesn't burn oil. It's got plenty of power. It's got such a tight gear ratio. Going uphill, tons of torque, pretty hard to stall. It's a tractor. It's still got some decent like power throughout all the gears. So I have no problem riding with people with 250 and 454 strokes with this bike. And they just are amazed at what I'm able to pull off with it. I did a valve tune on the bike this past fall. The bike was losing a lot of power, and I was like, I still thought that it had more to give. I thought it was the valves because I did a bit of research, and it was. This engine is pretty much a clone of the Honda CR230F, and it's air cooled and it's pretty easy to work on, but it is quite tight space in there. I have a video on that. I can have it in the description on how to do the valve tune. But anyway, you might even be able to get a Gio for cheap if it has this problem and just get it running, because now after the valve tune, the power all came back. The bike starts up great, whereas before it would take like 30 kicks to start, and it's not like stalling at lower RPMs sometimes, or shifting, like losing power when I'm shifting, like on the verge of stalling. Those are symptoms that you need to do a valve tune, or that you have insanely low compression. So the front exhaust valve, that one was still pretty much the same, so I didn't even need to adjust it. The intake valve, I need to do an adjustment on, tighten it up, and that brought all the power back and compression. And so I'm very happy with that. The engine is just raring to go still after all these years. This chain guard here cracked up there. No big deal. The chain double fed in there and was jammed, and thankfully it unjammed itself while I was rolling down a small hill, or I would have been having to walk home with this thing in the bushes. So you got to really watch how the tension of your chain, that you check it before you ride, because it can either pop or jam. And also, this bike comes with a rock guard for the engine, which is a big plus. And I'm pretty happy with the frame. I'm on my second set of plastics. Some of them have broke, like that one. When I was tumbling the bike down a hill, it pretty much broke in half. Replaced it. The gas tank doesn't hold much gas. That's a bit of a downfall, but the bike will still go 3 hours on a tank because it's super good on gas. And I can ride to the next town and back through the mountains on this bike before it will run out of gas. Plus do some extra trails. So that's amazing. And it really helps with weight reduction too. Like, it's got a low center of gravity, this bike, so that really helps with like hill climbs, and it's really agile, good cornering. You can corner pretty tight with it. You can hit that brake and just whip the back end, and you're in full control. This baby just rips. It's like a KX100 kind of. It's like a 4-stroke version of that, really. The same exact size. The rear shock, I mentioned it before. It's a Showa name brand, one of the lower quality name brand shocks. Probably meant for like a 100cc bike or something. It's like a pit bike shock anyway. It can take a lot of abuse. It doesn't have much to work with. I have it on full stiffness because otherwise it just won't cut it for me. I'm still pretty happy with it because it's tough and it does the job. I replaced the foot pegs because this one was dented when I was doing a high-speed corner on a road, and the bike, I was pretty much drifting it, and then it caught and flung the other way and smashed onto the other side of the bike. That only bent that. Didn't even bend the handlebars. Punctured that side of this grip, and it had a sticky throttle. I fixed that. That's all that happened from that. Name brand bike, can't lie, the handlebars would have been bent to crap. Another time that did some damage to the back end was I was going 80k down the road. The back axle fell out and I almost smashed into some trees, like drifting the bike with it locked up. That was insane. So it warped the rear disc. Have that replaced. The caliper was fine, amazingly, but I broke the original caliper when I was trying to change the pads on it, and I got a different one that is identical off eBay for pretty cheap. You can get the lines, you can get levers, pegs, all that stuff, muffler, probably exhaust, all off eBay for cheap. Most of it's like, most of these sort of parts are like 20 bucks. Levers would be like 10. It's just a bargain fest on there. Anyway, so I have to say the stock Gio rubber that comes with the bike is super grippy. The rear tire won't last very long because it's too soft for like rocks, but good performance though. So this isn't the stock rear one. I'm on like my third. That's the stock rim, and it has a few small dents, but they're not affecting anything. These bolts holding this rear sprocket on all broke in half except for that one, so I replaced them with bigger bolts. I rethreaded it, so that's reinforced now. Stuff like that you got to do. You have to do a lot more tinkering on Chinese Gios, but they are worth the money. If you can find one in good condition for cheap, and you're not like a serious hardcore rider. This was my primary bike for only about 2 years, and now it's been my secondary, but I actually end up riding it more than my name brand bikes. At the moment I have 2 name brand bikes and the Gio, and I end up riding the Gio the most because I don't know, it's just always ready to go. And the name brand bike, sometimes I gotta ship parts in, then that's what I got the Gio for. I'm riding the Gio in between, and I end up getting a ton of videos with this thing, and I'm really torturing it. I take it on terrain as hard as anything. It sucks in the mud, this bike. Plus it'll fling, the way the rear fender is designed, it doesn't seem to catch mud very well, and it will fling it right on your back. And another thing is that air filter chamber isn't designed the best, and there'll be mud in there and water and dirt, so you're gonna need to clean that out if you go in the mud. So all in all, very happy with this bike. Engine is amazing. The frame is good. The seat, as you can see, I have it duct taped because I spun the bike doing 180s and I let go of it, and the rear fender bent up, and after many hard hits, the part of the frame which went under the fender broke right off then, and also this tore the seat when it flipped up from a couple of flips. One was going up a hill climb. It kept popping up like a rooster tail after the seat was torn. See that piece of metal? Just put a small screw in to hold the plastic down, and that fixed it. So I have that duct tape, but you can replace that with seat cover or whatever. You just gotta get a high power staple gun. I have a seat cover, but not a high power staple gun, so I don't think that's a big deal right now. Anyway, there'll definitely be more videos coming up with this thing, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you this coming riding season on YouTube.